Hey there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Opt-in Podcast. As always, I am so very glad you're here, and I have a very interesting conversation to have with you today, all about intrapreneurship. And it's a Saturday around here. We just got out of school. If you're listening to this sometime in the future, I'm recording this just at the very beginning of June. And I have been having a lot of conversations, and when I have time, hopping on social to catch up with everybody. And I keep seeing this idea of intrapreneurship appear almost out of thin air. And it's been striking to me because this is something that was front and center in my life in 2017. So 6 years ago, this was a hot topic and something that I was immersed in greatly. So I started to look around and think, wonder why now? Why right now is this coming back to the forefront? And this morning I woke up and I said, you know what? We need to talk about it right here. We need to tell the story. And a friend of mine actually mentioned her struggles inside of corporate when she herself was trying to be an entrepreneur. So today's podcast is going to be a little bit of everything. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about why I believe it's becoming front and center once again. I'm going to share with you my story because I find that it's very interesting and timely for what we'll discuss next, which is what you can do if you've decided that that's really the right lane for you inside of other people's businesses, and how you can be a successful entrepreneur and grow your career in whichever direction you want. So we're going to dive right in. I thought because this might be a word or a topic that lacks some familiarity to some of you, that I was going to do, what we do when we want to set the stage and all be on the same page. And actually went out and I looked up the phrase, said, well, what is an intrapreneur? And it is the act of behaving like an entrepreneur while working within a large organization. And these people, the intrapreneurs, implement revolutionary strategies and ideas to scale the business from the rank and file. Eventually, most of these people become executive leaders. So why aren't we talking about intrapreneurship more? If this really is one of the key characteristics, one of the key functions of somebody that has the ability to become a future executive leader, shouldn't we be paying more attention? Shouldn't we be doubling down and teaching these skills and making these opportunities? I say yes. And I would wager that it's getting stifled, not because of the board of management or the board of directors or even the C-suite. It's because it makes the rank and file people managers really, really nervous. And this is how I know that the lack of conversation, the lack of opportunity, the lack of awareness that intrapreneurship can actually be a viable career path for some of you is present in the facts. In 2020, there was a lot of conversation around the mass exodus out of corporations, small businesses. People were just leaving in droves to start their own whatevers, their own businesses, their own online shops, their own Etsy shops, network marketing. They were running for the hills because of many reasons, some because they didn't have childcare, some because they were so burnt out. Whatever the case may be, in 2020, we saw the application for small businesses grow 20% over a prior year, and there had never been growth like this ever in history. And in fact, when you look at the data year over year, it continues to grow steadily. People are leaving corporate and small business to start their own endeavors at a rapid rate. I would wager, without any scientific data, that one of the reasons for this is we don't provide intrapreneurship opportunities or provide awareness that it's possible to become one. And so others take it out onto the street, they take their own ideas, and they roll the dice and can see how it goes. Now, if you dig further into the statistics, you can see that very few of these businesses are actually ever successful. Most of these individuals end up working for somebody else, and they're frustrated when they do. because they tried the entrepreneurship thing. It didn't work out. They've labeled themselves as not successful in that space, and they've resigned themselves to the fact that they're just going to have these day in, day out, 9-to-5s, very boring lives. I say it doesn't need to be that way at all. I say that if we all start talking about entrepreneurship, if we start seeking out opportunities to become entrepreneurs, if we teach how to do it successfully and we make room for it to happen, then many of you that are seeking more or different or have a mission or have a really purpose-driven personal life and you want to bring that into your professional life, you'll be able to do that. Because once entrepreneurship is available and known and understood, and you have the skills to be successful in that line of work, sky is the limit. Absolutely. Now, all of you know, I have been working for more than 2 decades. I have been in the professional space for a very long time. And at the very beginning of my career, it was at the .com boom. So innovation, especially where I am, right outside of San Francisco, was just astronomical. Everybody had an idea. Everybody worked for a startup. Everybody was going and getting funding. I mean, it was just the world on fire. And innovation became something that large corporations said, we need to double down on. We need to get our act together. We need to create these innovation centers of excellence, and we need to gather innovative ideas. This is the ticket. Otherwise, we're going to get eaten up by all these startups that are out there. And so inside of these large corporations, it happened in a variety of ways in the early 2000s, but you ended up with some executive responsible for innovation. And then basically what they did is they created a digital suggestion box. And yes, that's how I'm coining it. It was a digital suggestion box. And it was basically bring your innovation ideas to us, submit them, and then we'll pick some to chase after. The problem with that is it was a blind pitch. Best case scenario, you filled out a form, you sent it into a mailbox, and you hoped for the best. You weren't given the opportunity to explain. You weren't given the opportunity to go back and refine. You weren't given the opportunity to research. And worse, when I worked at The Gap, they were receiving 20,000 ideas a quarter. There's no way one small innovation department could go through all of those ideas and vet them. There was no way they could handle the volume. In fact, they ended up with so many suggestions or ideas. Within the first year, they had shut down the tool altogether. Nobody could submit any more ideas. And by the time I left that company over 7 years later, frankly, I hadn't seen a single innovation idea come to the forefront. It was a great idea. Tap the rank and file. Ask them what they see as strategic differentiators. Ask them what they see could potentially disrupt how we do things, and then go and do it. The problem is they were overwhelmed. And because the rank and file didn't understand what was necessary to include in a pitch, they couldn't assess what was given to them. It was a fool's errand, a waste of time, and innovation prioritization died with it. This is a common story across the corporate landscape. Every time they request ideas of innovation, something similar happens. And it isn't too long after all of this that the rank and file employees realize nothing's ever going to come of it. And it creates a low level of frustration. It creates a culture where people don't speak up and recommend changes. They don't recommend innovation because it's not well received. So we went from a world where innovation was king and they wanted all of the ideas to a moment in time where the company, the leaders, and the employees didn't know what to do with the ideas, how to assess them, how to select them, or even how to implement them once they came in. So shortly after this, we fast forward maybe 10 years or so, and the concept of intrapreneurship hits the stage. And this was a new version, Innovation 2.0. We know what we're going to do this time. We're not going to start a program and solicit ideas. We're going to identify people in the organization who have the skills, the aptitude, the drive that we believe entrepreneurs have, and give them the space in the room inside of our company to do exactly that. Now, the company that I worked for decided that this was incredibly important, and they decided that the future C-suite executives of their companies needed to have the skills of an intrapreneur. And I was lucky in that I was nominated to be a part of a program, which was very small. I believe there are 15 of us total globally across a global organization of 250,000 employees that were selected in 2017 to become intrapreneurs. They hired a company. They literally hired an individual and all of his employees whose sole job was to come into large corporations and teach intrapreneurship. And so all of us arrived to Munich, Germany, that is. And we had come from all corners of the world. Now, our pre-work before we were to get there was to submit a startup idea, to create a pitch. Now, we didn't know how to do this. We didn't have any tools or guidance or expertise. We were just given some guidelines on how it needed to be submitted. And under 5 minutes or less, we did our pitches. So we all came to Munich with these pitches in hand. They had been evaluated by the selection committee beforehand. And when we all got together, we met this team that was going to teach us and guide us through this entire process, where we would shortlist the ideas and then hopefully create a minimum viable product. So as we were getting to know each other and we were together for a few days, you observe working styles and you vet the ideas that are presented. And then all of a sudden they said, vote for the idea you believe in the most. Well, candidly, because the selection team had shortened the list of pitches so that we had just the number that we needed, I didn't like any of them. I wasn't bought in, and I didn't really know what to do. So as I watched how the teams were forming, because we were kind of picking as we go and people were starting to collect together and it was going, very quickly I said, well, I don't want to work in that team because that personality will be challenging for me to be successful with. I don't want to work in that team because that personality is also challenging. And I ended up not selecting an idea. I ended up selecting the personalities that I believed I would be most successful with. The idea, frankly, I thought was not the best. We'll be polite and kind. And so we formed as a team. And at the time, the idea was a travel insurance product. I don't even remember what it was. The only reason I remember that is because one of the very first exercises that they had us do was go gather feedback from potential users. And we spent an entire day, our team, on a train in Munich, going back and forth from the airport to the city center. Mind you, only 2 of our team members spoke German. And we were walking up to complete strangers on their way to the airport or coming back to the airport and talking to them about travel insurance. It was insane. It also helps you bond really fast because you're all very embarrassed and nobody knows how to speak any of the languages in front of you. And over the course of those few days, they presented to us the process that we were going to follow and how we were going to move through the stages to understand how to become an intrapreneur and how to take an idea and bring it to a minimum viable product. And let me tell you, to be brief, this went on for almost a year from that first meeting. We had a video call once a week for 2 hours with the training team. We were given homework assignments in between that we had to do. And it was taking somewhere in the range of 4 to 8 hours of my work week every week to work on this project. Now, I'll tell you, very early on, we threw that idea out. We realized it wasn't going to be successful. Nobody wanted what we were trying to sell. And we completely changed directions and created an insurance product for drought conditions for farmers. I know, right? Travel insurance to farmers. How did that happen? I honestly can't remember. What I can tell you, though, is as we continued to go through the process and they taught us each step of the way, and we continued to pivot the idea and learn more and engage more people and get more feedback and kind of just continue to work together, all of the ideas gelled and came to be. And by the time they brought us back together at the end of the year, we were brought into a partnership with IBM. They have something called IBM Watson, which is where all of their innovation and think tank happens. And one of the IBM fellows was so excited about what we were doing, he volunteered to work with us for free and on his own time. And an IBM fellow, just to give you an idea, he has an organization of somewhere in the range of 3,000 to 5,000 people working for him globally. He didn't have a lot of free time to help us, but he did. And he connected us to people that he knew at weatherchannel.com and AccuWeather and a few other companies. And before we knew it, we had access to data. We had a technology team willing to build our product, and we were able to beta test what we were building. It all came from us having this passion around this idea and working collectively together and taking what we learned about intrapreneurship and applying it as they guided us through. The bottom line of this story is that we presented our pitch and it won. We presented our minimum viable product and it won. And we were invited back to present our idea to every chief operating officer in the entire global organization, with the hopes that one of them would raise their hand and say, we'll give you the money to bring this thing to life. So we came back to Munich collectively as a team. We had polished our pitch. The team had taught us how to do all of those things. We presented, and at the very end, we had 3 distinct companies come to us and volunteer to fund it. Now, I left the company shortly thereafter, so I don't really know exactly how it came to be. I believe that it was implemented at least in Africa and Australia. That's really besides the point. What is the point that I'm getting to is that I went back to the company a few months later, and out of that group of 15 of us that started in various teams and learned all of the same framework, over half within 2 years had been promoted to a C-level role. The company had taken aspiring executives who they saw potential in, gave them the opportunity to learn how to be an intrapreneur, demonstrate that capability, and then let us back into the wild where we were able to demonstrate it at such a high degree of success that we achieved exactly what the company had hoped. We became their next C-suite executives. Now, this is a Pollyanna story. It is my real life story, I guarantee you. And I still have those relationships today. What I will tell you is at the end of this, when we made the pitch and people wanted to buy and it was really exciting, they sat down with us after and they said, "You're the first team to ever get this far. Why? What was so different with all of you? How did you decide to work together? What was it from a chemistry perspective?" And all of us chuckled a little bit because we had talked about it previously. And it was because all of us had decided who we could work best with. And that's how we ended up in the team. It had nothing to do with the idea. It had nothing to do with cultural backgrounds. It had nothing to do with the variation of expertise and skill set. It was simply a handful of individuals looking around the room and saying, these are the people that I believe I will be most successful with. So this story I share with you, and frankly, I had forgotten about it until this intrapreneur word started appearing. I literally forgot about this. It started appearing out of nowhere because working for a company that believes that intrapreneurship is one of the ways to mold and grow and groom future executives proved true. And further, and what I see really is the hero of the story, is that by knowing yourself well enough, knowing your working style well enough, knowing what's going to push your buttons and what's going to make you successful or not successful well enough, and then making decisions based on that opens up a world of possibilities for you. It's okay to say that group, that role, that department, it's not for me. I can't do my best work in those conditions. Because if you think about it, if we had all just said, we're going to pick our favorite idea and go, likely none of the pitches would have been successful. Those frustrations with others would have remained. Maybe we wouldn't have learned all of the entrepreneur skills that we had needed to learn because we were so distracted with team dynamics. With our team, there were no team dynamics to manage through. We distributed work. We all did what we said. We all touched base and stayed in contact with each other. We liked each other. We liked each other so much, in fact, that we all flew in a day early for one of the meetings just so that we could have dinner and hang out. And one of those people became a client for me years later in a very tumultuous client relationship. And that relationship that she and I had allowed us to settle the waters. Because I and we chose the environment we could work in the best, we were highly successful. So I say that corporations should be paying much more attention to developing entrepreneurs in their companies intentionally. I say that while it gives them a pipeline of new executives, it also will bring about strategic transformation and keep employees inside of the company instead of starting their own thing because they have the ability to grow and build within. If you met me on the street and you asked me what I do, I would tell you that I build businesses for other people. I take them from nothing and I grow them somewhere in the range of $250 to $750 million, and then I let them go. Now, I have worked inside of large corporations for over 20 years. This is my first job in a startup. And you want to now ask, well, how do you build businesses if you're inside of a large corporation? Because I went into departments and teams and branches, and I took something or nothing and built it to greatness. I'm a business builder because I'm an intrapreneur. Sure, I have all sorts of ideas to start all sorts of businesses and do all sorts of things, and I want to be an entrepreneur in my own right. My passion, though, and my gift is being inside of an organization and seeing where we can build and where we can grow and what we can do. And so my call out to you, and what I want to talk about for the next half of the podcast, is how if you are inspired by this story, you can identify what lane you want to be in, if intrapreneurship makes sense for you, and then how you go about doing it. So being an entrepreneur, as we talked about, is somebody that's on the inside. You're in the rank and file, and you are revolutionizing the strategy of the company, and you're interrupting disruptive ideas that are going to help you exponentially grow. Now, I know these are big words and it sounds very lofty, but really what it comes down to is that you're the risk taker. You're willing to say yes, even if you're not sure how you're going to get there. And you're willing to put it all on the line because you believe in an idea enough to give it everything you've got. When we look at companies that are growing and have a healthy culture, it's because they celebrate and recognize that their employees have valuable ideas that are going to help build and grow and expand their businesses. So the very first thing, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you say, I love taking risk, I love doing things that I don't know, I'm constantly curious, because that's a key. I want to try my hand at this intrapreneurship thing. I want to see how it goes. And so you go into your job boards and you're like, well, there is not a job that says this. Well, spoiler alert, there isn't a job that says intrapreneur. It might be something like business transformation leader, digital transformation leader. It could be something as simple as strategic operations. Entrepreneurs often are buried within the functions for which they work. They're not this isolated team out to the side, because you can't be a successful entrepreneur if you're a generalist. You need to be an expert and a specialist in a discipline or a field. So if you believe that you like to take risks, if you are a person who is always curious, if you like the challenge and the chase of new and different experiences and problems to solve, if you enjoy building something and handing it off to somebody else and not having emotions about it with how they run it after you give it away, intrapreneurship is probably something that you should pursue. I would strongly recommend it. Now, as I said, your company isn't going to have a job or a career path for an intrapreneur. These are going to be special assignments. These are going to be special projects. Maybe these are even multi-year assignments for you to get something done. Most often, if you want to be an intrapreneur, you're going to need to come up with the ideas. It's on you to develop an idea. You know that thing that's been in the back of your head all of the time, or those pain points you hear your colleagues talking about constantly, and you say, if we just did this, it would make everything so much faster, more accurate, easier, everybody would be happier. Those are entrepreneurial thoughts. And so then you take one of those ideas and you research it. And you dig deep and you find more pain points and you evaluate it from all of the angles. And that idea grows and grows to a potential solution. And then you do some more verification and you ask more questions and you get more curious, and maybe it changes 3 or 4 times, and you investigate and investigate and investigate. And you figure out who this is going to solve problems for and who needs to make the decision to move forward and how much you think it's going to cost. And you run through all of these things, and your little tiny idea becomes this full-bodied proposal. This is the thing you want to build. This is the thing you want to change. This is the disruption you want to bring to your team, your department, your industry. And it's your baby to a certain extent. This is your idea, and you're protective of it, and you're excited to share it with everybody else. And then you pull your head up and you look around and you go, who do I talk to about this? This is where intrapreneurship dies often in companies. All of that solo work where you get to think and create and be curious and document and come up with ideas and pitch, kind of talk to your friends and figure out what to do. That's all internal to you work. At some point, you need to bring it to light. At some point, you need to take the baby out of the hospital and show it to the world. At some point, it has to become front and center so it can be real. And like the conversation I had with my friend yesterday, your manager may not want to hear it. So before you ever take these ideas out into the world, somebody that's a successful entrepreneur knows where they need to take it and how they need to do it and what political mechanisms they need to pull and deploy and employ so that they can keep the baby alive. This is the tricky part. And I think one of the reasons that there is a trend and there is data behind that most of the entrepreneurs become the future executives, because, friend, these skills, understanding how to do the corporate dance around the political ballroom, is key to becoming an executive. Whether your company is big or small, you need to understand how to navigate the landscape. It is just a fact. And because we're humans, I don't think it will ever go away, because it's very similar to the cliques that you had in high school or the elite sport teams that you had in college or fraternities or sororities or any of those things. We as humans like to collect in tribes, and those tribes take on a personality and they don't love when you come in and disrupt it. So just like all of those in the corporate world, there's a hierarchy and there's a political mechanism that you need to work within. So now you have this idea, you have this proposal, and you're ready to bring it forward. And you have enough awareness to know that if you bring it to your manager, they're going to kill it. Not only are they going to kill it, but maybe they're going to be angry that you spent time doing that. Maybe this could actually backfire on you, and they could say, well, your other work is suffering because you're spending all this time dreaming over here. In this scenario, it requires you to gain advocates that are not your manager. It requires you to understand how to build relationships and have voices outside of your central line of reporting that support what you're doing. This isn't a go up and go around. This is a gain buy-in from as many influential people as possible scenario. Because if your manager is a brick wall for you and you really want to be an intrapreneur, you have to find a way around the wall. You can't just take a sledgehammer and start banging through it. You're smarter than that. So you need to find a way around it. And like I said, this is the make or break it of intrapreneurship. If you want to be an intrapreneur, following the linear path, following the yellow brick road, if you will, directly into your manager's office when you know it's not going to be well received, is not the right move. Now, I could give you many, many scenarios, and I could give you also some examples where the manager supports you and helps enable you and gets you forward. They're few and far between. So if you want to be an intrapreneur, if you have ideas and you want to share them, what I recommend to you wholeheartedly is that you get a mentor in your corner. You get a mentor in your corner who understands what you're trying to do, can help you acquire the skills that you need to take those ideas and to research those ideas and build a proposal and then gain buy-in and advocacy from others, and then helps you get into the right room with a decision where it actually can be heard and well received and a decision can be made without alienating your manager. Because again, this is a dance. And your manager is a perfectly wonderful human being. They just don't have a growth mindset. The biggest pitfall inside of businesses today is that there are intrapreneurs that are stifled because their middle management is afraid to let them blossom. This is one of the things that we do not talk about enough. And you know what happens is when these intrapreneurs feel stifled, you leave. You go open your own businesses. You have an Etsy shop. You quiet quit. There's a million things that you do because you feel like there's nowhere for you to go and your ideas die. Intrapreneurship is incredibly important. And in order for you to acquire the skills and be successful in a role like that, you need somebody to help guide you. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify if this is really the sort of work that you want to be doing. If you love taking risks, if you're curious, if you like to build things and then hand them off once they're done to start on the next thing. And then you need to come up with your idea, and you need to do all of the work around getting it from an idea to a very in-depth proposal. And then you need to figure out how to gain organizational buy-in, and you need to figure out how to get advocacy. Ideally, you have a mentor that's guiding you through, and eventually you bring your idea into the light. And if we follow this scenario, it's successful and they've agreed to implement your idea, and now you're in charge of it. Congratulations. You became an intrapreneur. Congratulations. You are on the starting line to your intrapreneurship career. And it's just the beginning. See, the thing is if you have decided that you want to be an intrapreneur and you don't have the structure that I had, and I shared that with you very specifically because I want you to understand that it's an anomaly. I had a year worth of training to learn how to become an intrapreneur. You aren't going to be afforded that opportunity. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. And so what that means is that you need to have your eyes open to training opportunities and learning that's available, and books that you should read, and mentors that you should have, and people that you should be observing around you that are already successful intrapreneurs, and you can mirror and mimic what they're doing. The road is a lot harder for you because you have decided that you want to be an intrapreneur and there isn't a formal structure for you to learn how to do it. This is intrapreneurship at its finest. It's trial by fire. It's dust yourself off and pick yourself back up and go, go, go again. So when you decide to go this road, and I advocate that it's the most fun road one can go if they enjoy doing work like this, you also need to be aware and available to learn on your own. You need to be aware and available to identify non-traditional learning opportunities. You need to reach out and dip into other industries. You need to see what entrepreneurs are learning how to do. You're understanding the language that they use. You're understanding the processes that they follow to take their idea from just an idea to getting funding. Because let's face it, that's what you're doing just inside of your company instead of going to get Series A or B funding from a venture firm. To be an intrapreneur, you need to know how to be an entrepreneur. The same principles apply. And corporations don't teach you this because they don't think it's necessary. However, they're desperate to have entrepreneurs because that's where growth and disruption come from. That's where strategic transformation comes from having an entrepreneur. So my experience, my personal experience, is that learning how to be an entrepreneur and leaning heavily into that changed my professional career trajectory. When I entered that program in 2017, I was a director. I was a director for a company that was going through a ridiculous, messy merger and acquisition process. I was pretty certain I wasn't going to have a job come the end of the year. Pretty certain. And what I realized as I was going through the process is that I was learning the structure for doing things I was already doing. I was already coming up with ideas and being messy about presenting them and shifting things around and disrupting and changing business models and doing all those things. I loved building things and handing them off. I had this fundamental realization that I was given this opportunity, this once in a lifetime opportunity to learn how to do this thing that could fundamentally change my life. After I learned how to be an intrapreneur, I ended up in the C-suite. I, for a while, advised startup companies in the insurtech space. Today, I'm running 4 startup companies. All because I was given a non-traditional learning opportunity. I doubled down on it and I took what I could get from it. And I never stopped evolving. Intrapreneurship is for a specific type of person. Growth mindset, curiosity, drive, tenacity, loves a little bit of a risk, loves a little bit of danger, and can take the hard knocks. If you're willing to do the work to become an intrapreneur, your opportunities are endless. You can pivot your career in whatever direction you want. And I will tell you that more often than not, in the last few years of my professional career, I have tapped into my entrepreneur network and said, how do you turn a culture of a company around? Your culture of your company is so wonderful. What did you do? Oh, you aligned around core values? I should do that too. That's what I did with my team when I became a COO. Oh, you put together a pitch for funding. What was in that pitch? How did you do that? Oh, you used real customer stories and visualization. Let me try that. Fantastic. We got funding to implement a new strategic software. Oh, you had that conflict with a client. How did you get through that? You really tried to figure out and asked a lot of questions until you knew what they cared about. That never dawned on me. I went into my intrapreneur network and mentors, and I learned. I listened to podcasts of entrepreneurs. I doubled down on all that information, and then I took it back into my corporate life and I applied it. To be a successful entrepreneur, you can't wait around for somebody to teach you how. You can't wait around for somebody to offer you the job. Instead, you need to create the opportunities for yourself. You need to go out and find the training. You need to be curious. You need to be full of joy with finding solutions and answers to problems you didn't even know exist yet. As you can see, I have a ton of passion about entrepreneurship. I got really fired up because people are starting to talk about it again. And I thought, oh, this concept has gone dormant and nobody's going to focus on it. Everybody just wants to do their jobs and do their things. But I think it's so important because we can see that there is a significant part of the American workforce, for example, because that's where the stats are coming from, that have a passion to build things. The growth of small businesses since 2020 has been exponential. And it's not because all of a sudden there was a bunch of entrepreneurs that came to age. It's because there were these entrepreneurs that were working inside of other people's companies and they weren't given the opportunity to be entrepreneurs. They got frustrated, they got burnt out, and they left. And they went the harder road, to be honest. It is significantly harder to be an entrepreneur than it is to be an intrapreneur inside of somebody's company. Because you have fail safes. There's a safety net. You'll get caught if you fall. If you're an entrepreneur, it's all on you. So if you're at a crossroads in your career, or there's something that I said in this podcast today where you're like, oh, that is super interesting. I never really looked at it that way. Entrepreneurship might be for you. And I'm really curious who out of this group that's listening to this podcast is considering it. I have a couple of offers that are available that can help you start your learning journey, pitch it and close it. And I would love to connect you with those opportunities so that you can start trying it out and seeing if entrepreneurship might be a good fit, if it might be the missing puzzle piece to your career, if it might spark a little bit of joy and light in your life again about how you want to show up at work every day. And I guarantee you that if this is something that you think might bring you a little bit more joy at work, it's going to bring more joy into your personal life too. So consider it. Think about it. Are you already an entrepreneur? Does this intrigue you enough for you to consider it? Are you ready to start doing some non-traditional learning to try it on and see if it's a good fit for you? If yes is the answer to any of these things, I want you to share this podcast on your stories, or I want you to DM me and I will give you the information for Pitch It and Close It. So thank you for listening to me talk about my passion around entrepreneurship today. You have been lovely to be with. I can't wait to talk to you the next time. And until I see you again, please know that you are strong, you are wise, and you are brave. And I believe in you. Have a great day, friends.